Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. My two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Michael Reed, are not here yet, but they will be very, very soon. The title of tonight's episode is The Headstart. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can go to there by going to www.listenfrederick.com. And to get into a head start into this offseason, heading into training camp, we thought we'd bring in our guy, Mr. David Harrison. Thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday evening, sir. How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. I appreciate the invite as always.
Of course, sir. And look, we talked about OTAs, so we can't go any further than, look, we'll get into Jayden Daniels. We'll get into the players and the highlights that we talked about. But other things have happened off the field, being that Washington has hired Sosna, and then have hired David Blackburn. If you can kind of talk about those two guys in particular and what they offer and bring to the table.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing you like about both of them is they both come from very successful programs, right? And I know the Detroit Lions are kind of a more recently, successful type of program. But at the end of the day, when you look at the talent that they've gone ahead and put on the roster, and honestly, I think that there's a lot to go that goes with bringing in a guy like Jared Goff. I mean, he's a first-round quarterback of the team who had him. They went to the Super Bowl, granted, but then they trade him for a veteran. That's not usually a good sign for a first-round quarterback. So they bring him in, and not only do they help him resurrect his career, he helps them resurrect their franchise, and now they're making noise in the playoffs. He's getting an extension, so it's really kind of worked out for everybody. And there's just kind of like they always talk about like this magic potion, right? Like what's the mix? What's in the water? What are they? And I don't mean to make a Northern Michigan joke about water, but like what are they doing in Detroit that makes them so successful right now? And so you look at a guy like Brandon Sosna. Like one thing that's really impressive about him is in a business that is very hard to survive in, let alone thrive in, and that's any level of the National Football League. This guy's 31 years old, man, and understand he's like 2 steps away from being a general manager. Like if things go the right way, this guy will be a general manager before he turns 40. And that's no small feat. So there's no guarantee that's going to happen, right? But it just kind of shows you that this is the kind of person that's really on the rise. Adam Peters thanked the Detroit Lions specifically for kind of helping facilitate that hire. And so it just kind of shows that that's an organization. And look, that matters too. Like organizations want people with talent to see, we're going to take care of you. Now, when you're getting interviewed for a promotion, teams are kind of limited in how much they can try to block it anyway. Right. But when you go that extra distance to go ahead and facilitate the move, the advancement for your people who deserve it, it just shows that, one, he's a person who's deserving of it. Two, coming from an organization that you want to be a part of. And then the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, look, I know Commanders fans hate it because they're right up the road. And it's like, why do they get all that stuff? And we're stuck down here with, everything from stadiums to owners to quarterbacks. Like, you know what I mean? Hopefully some of that stuff is starting to change. But David Blackburn comes from an organization that has been kind of one of the models around the NFL for a very long time. So anytime you can tap into that kind of knowledge and that understanding, and this team is trying to set up their own kind of what it's like to play like a Commander, to kind of cheat off the play like a Raven thing. So when you can tap into that talent pool, you definitely want to be able to do that.
Yeah, and with Sosna, I heard that what I read is that he kind of helped come up with player development plans specifically in Detroit. And that's something that obviously when you look at who they drafted and having, it wasn't Judy, what's his name? The one wide receiver that they had. They had it.
Ross St. Brown?
Had the big injury. And that obviously they had a plan for him. He came back and did really well. I forget his name, my goodness.
Oh, you're talking about Jameson Williams?
Yes, Jameson Williams. Yeah. And so that sort of thing, you can see that they had a plan in place for it. And is that's something that obviously I kind of like poo-pooed a couple weeks ago, but looking at it, that's honestly the kind of recipe you want here.
Yeah, I mean, it all matters. You know what I mean? Like nothing – it's easy for us, all of us, right? Fans, media, everybody to really just kind of get zoned in and kind of sucked into everything we can see, right? There's a lot that happens in an organization behind the scenes that we don't get to see, and even media, who gets a little bit more access, obviously, than fans do. Like, we don't get to see a lot of these things either. I mean, Brandon Sosna, like, I'll be honest with you, like, if I meet him during training camp, that'll be a great opportunity. It'll be kind of a chance meeting. It's not going to be something that's orchestrated, something that's done really on purpose, but that probably would be the only time I really talk to him until maybe next year.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be somebody I see his daily dealings. And here in Washington, his main priority is going to be kind of the main negotiator for contracts. And that's going to be kind of where his next step towards becoming a future assistant GM and GM is going to take place. But if you read kind of what the Washington Commanders have planned for him, we haven't been able to talk to Adam Peters about that hire or David Blackburn either. But when you look at just kind of what they are putting out there to us, like he's going to have his hand in a lot of different avenues, and they go all the way from some of the business side stuff to the obviously the cap management and the CBA compliance with the players, but also like you said, like having a hand in making sure these players are taken care of as well. And I'll tell you, man, I'm not going to get into the details because it wouldn't be professional, but like there are signs around, even just standing in practice, kind of just waiting on a press conference, and you see some of the new faces around and some of the things they're doing to make sure that these guys are taken care of better than they have been in the past. And it's honestly a little bit unsettling at times, but it's also very good to know that these guys have people who not only that are focused and worried about their X's and O's success, but also worried about their success as human beings.
And it's funny with the David Blackburn thing because in the past, like our best guys that were up and coming would generally leave, and we couldn't retain them, right? And just seeing that we're actually bringing that talent here again, it just really does show you the macrocosm of just the fact of what's happening here. And that being said, I want to kind of get into OTAs. What have you seen from Jaden Daniels?
I mean, he's a lot of fun, man. Like, I think that's just the best way for an outsider to kind of talk about it. Loves the game, loves being on the field. I mean, he's had, no matter what the drill is, no matter how maybe, it might be half speed, it might be walking speed. He's just throwing a football to a coach. You know what I mean? Like, whatever he's doing, he's having fun doing. He's got a smile on his face, but he's also doing it with intent and with purpose, right? So there's a really nice blend of staying loose and enjoying the game that you fell in love with as a kid, but also being a professional and understanding this is serious business and going out there and getting the job done. And it's producing really good results. I think right now you can kind of just see him getting more and more comfortable. You see him kind of just understanding who he is as a player, but then you hear some of his teammates talk about him, and they talk about his presence early, his presence late. Dan Quinn talking about him staying on the practice field. Marcus Mariota talking about him commanding the offense, commanding the other players on the field, and really showing these vets that he is a guy they can rely on to know what he's doing. This isn't a situation right now. And again, we're very early in the process, but if it continues, he's not going to be this young quarterback that everybody's got to hold his hand and lift him up and make him look good. He's a guy who's going to come out here and try to help them look good, and that's a very promising thing to hear right now.
Yeah, and hopefully he's not flicking off the opposing fans on the sidelines during the preseason game like Johnny Manziel did back in the day. Yeah. And John Allen spoke about it, saying that he prides himself in being the first guy in the building, and Jayden Daniels is beating him in the morning into obviously the facility, which shows you the work ethic. He's taking it very, very seriously. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the DB group, because a lot of people made a hoopla about Dan Quinn saying the kind of seeing that these guys in different positions, like Emmanuel Forbes possibly doing kick returns and stuff. The one that glared to me was the Brian Robinson taking kicks, because that's something I said a couple weeks ago. Imagine that big frickin' dude running downfield full speed at you on kick return, and you're not going against first-team defense at that point. Kind of talk about that moving of players around and seeing what strengths they do have.
I dig it. I think it's really smart, especially at this point in your offseason. You really don't have a reason not to. And it's kind of something that Dan Quinn has already talked about as well. Like right now, their focus isn't getting the depth chart set. Their focus isn't understanding like who the starter here is, the starter there is. Their focus is everybody understanding what it is they're trying to do. Offense, defense, special teams. Do you understand what it is we're trying to execute? Do you understand how it is your position executes that? Because I don't care if you're the starting left tackle, if you're the fourth left tackle. We want you to know that a left tackle in this scheme, in this play, with this situation, on 3rd and 1 with this formation group, this is what the left tackle does. Do you understand that? If you do, then we're doing our job. If you don't, then we got a problem. We need to figure out how to fix it. So it doesn't matter who the number 1 guy is, the number 5 guy is. Everybody just needs to understand how to do the job. So, yeah, they're taking the opportunity to go ahead and let's see who fits where and who goes where. And, there's some guys that are already solidified, like Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. They're always on the field together as a duo linebacker, and that's what you want to see. But Emmanuel Forbes, sometimes he's in there with Benjamin St-Juste and Quan Martin and Jeremy Chin, and sometimes it's Michael Davis. And sometimes Quan Martin, well, most of the time Quan Martin is there free safety, but sometimes it's Defoe, right? Like you just kind of get these mixtures going on because, like Dan Quinn said, it's not about, understanding what it is to be the number 1 left tackle. It's about understanding what it is to be the at left tackle at all, or a perimeter cornerback, or a free safety. And yeah, I'm with you on Brian Robinson. When I saw him, I was standing next to Zach Selby, the team reporter for the Washington Commanders, when we first saw B-Rob standing back there to return a kick. And I feel bad for any guy who's got to watch number 8 running downhill like that on a kickoff return, if that comes to fruition. Again, we have no idea if we're going to see that in the regular season, but if we do, That's going to be really interesting. But then you also see Emmanuel Forbes doing it. First it was fielding punts, which is one thing. Then you see him running down in that kickoff formation. I'm not a fan of that one. I think that's an idea that the coaching staff needs to put in the tried it and now it's done pile. But we'll see what happens with that.
Now I want to get an update on Johnny Newton. Have you heard anything about? I know his surgery was successful. The timetable. A
Yeah.
lot of people have been speculating that around the not the bye week, but probably about mid-season is when you could possibly see him come back. I've seen a doctor on Twitter say it was more so of surgery, like on his kind of toe. Kind of talk about
Mhm.
Johnny Newton and when do you expect for him to come back?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's not a solid expectation for when he's going to
Okay.
come back. If you kind of look at when he had the procedure done, he had the procedure done. It was again, it's a similar procedure, not necessarily the exact same procedure. And even if it was the exact same procedure on a different foot, like nothing is carbon copied, right? It could be
Right.
a completely different process. But you kind of look at it like he had that surgery on his other foot in mid January, I believe it was, and his plan was to be ready and 100% for rookie minicamp. Rookie minicamp is in the beginning of May. So you go from mid January to the beginning of May. It's like a 2.5 window. If you're wanting to be 100% by rookie camp, then maybe it's even a 2 month window, right? So 2 months, 2.5 months. If you do that math and extrapolate that, then you kind of envision, okay, maybe training camp, he'll be all right. But again, it's a process. And at this point in time, I think the thing to remember when it comes to a guy like Johnny Newton is everything this team is doing right now is obviously you want to be as competitive as possible in the moment, right? But the way that they're approaching this is all the moves they've made this season are not necessarily about 2024. They're about the future because this team has 40 1-year contract or expiring contracts on the books right now. So
Insane.
they got 40 guys that they're either going to re-sign or let walk, and they're not re-signing all of them. They've got about $100 million in cap space projected. They protected all of their future draft capital in the trades that they made draft weekend. There's a reason for it. So Johnny Newton, as much as you want to see him on the field, and I know he's a second round pick, so you want to see him on the field as soon as possible. I get it. This team, I believe, is going to take the mentality of we want to protect his future. So if we can't see him till week 4 of the NFLC, we got to put him on a short-term IR on the PUP list to start the year to make sure that he's fully healthy, then so be it. They're not going to rush him back. They're not going to put him on the field before he's completely cleared. I mean, honestly, I was having a little bit of a conversation with Jeremy Reeves, who he says he feels 100% healthy, but they still won't clear him to practice fully. So he's frustrated because he wants to get out there. But that's what this team is doing is they're making sure these guys are really in position to be successful before they go throwing them out there in the deep end.
And respect to Jeremy. Of course, he wants to prove himself to the
Yeah.
new staff and to his teammates, but it
Yeah.
probably just shows the amount of respect and what the confidence I do have in Jeremy and what he does offer on the special teams and also on defense as well. I want to talk about a little bit. Do you have a surprise player from OTA so far? Not necessarily if that's blowing the doors off you or anything like that, but you're seeing kind of a difference and you're surprised by it.
I think the biggest surprise for me so far has been the fact that Quan Martin really kind of seems like that. And again, there's no depth chart, right? All that stuff. But reading the formations and reading who's playing with who, it really feels like Quan Martin's your starting free safety. And it doesn't really feel like it's that big of a competition between he and Defoe. And I really thought it would be
Mm.
a big competition because you go back and look at the tape. I mean, Derek Forrest was definitely on his way to becoming a very legitimate free safety or just
Yep.
safety in general in the NFL, not just on this team, but just in the NFL. And then, of course, the injury comes. And, you hate to see that for the guy, especially a guy like Derek Forrest. But, yeah, I mean, these coaches see it the way that they see it. They do it the way that they do it. And whatever it is they see in Quan Martin. And again, we got practice again on June 5th. We go out there and you see Derek Forrest out there taking all the first team reps with Jeremy Chin. And it wouldn't really surprise me either. But right now, that kind of stood out to me is not because, I don't think Quan Martin is capable, just because I thought both those guys were close enough that you would see a more of a rotation.
I got you. I got you. And now, Jonathan Allen spoke to reporters yesterday, and that was one of the
Mm-hmm.
more refreshing things to hear about his just not attitude, but his opinion of everything happening. Very excited. Is that something that is surprising to you at all? And because people have been speculating that John Allen could possibly be moved by the trade deadline this year, do you anticipate that being a really strong possibility? And do you think that or John Allen is going to be here to stay for this season at least?
No, I feel like if John Allen was going to be traded, it would happen draft weekend at the latest. I feel
Okay.
like, once he showed up, especially for the voluntary workouts earlier before the practices even started, like he was one of those, people that showed up like that. Just kind of shows and frustration is it's something. It's an interesting dynamic, right? Because on one hand, like as a human being, as a competitor, as someone who's a professional, someone who is used to doing this sport of football at a very high level, just from being a high school athlete going to Alabama, doing all those things. You understand the frustration, but at the same time, you also look at John Allen and say, well, you're a face of the franchise, you're a locker room leader, you got a captain's patch on. So to come out on these radio shows and doing these other things in the locker room and voicing these types of frustrations and saying things like, yeah, I thought about not playing here before and all these other things as a leader of these men, like you can't, it's really difficult to say that I thought about jumping ship and then go back to that ship and say, hey guys, follow me into the next war. Like it's really hard to do that kind of thing. So I think that he kind of, I wouldn't say hurt himself there. I think all the guys in the locker room have kind of a warrior's understanding of, realizing where he's coming from. But at the same time, man, like if you're going to be a leader of men, you've got to be someone they can rally around and trust that you're fully committed. So it is good to hear John Allen say those things. I never really had any doubt that when it came to him doing his work and his preparation, get on the field, that there was going to be any step back from that. The question is, how much of a leadership role is he really going to have in this new look team? And how much does it need it? And honestly, how much does he want to be that guy? Like, how much does he really want to try to be the guy in the forefront, the Spartan holding the big shield and all that other stuff? And how much does he want to just be a dog who's in the trenches doing his part to help his team be successful? Because, we all talk about these guys and, what's your leadership mentality? What's your leadership mentality? I mean, I've heard 5th round draft picks get asked what their leadership approach is. You don't need 90 leaders in the locker room. You don't need 50 leaders in the locker room. So, you only need, you need about a handful of them. But, if you get those key guys in place, let Bobby Wagner be that guy. Let Bobby Wagner be that standard bearer and be someone who shows everybody else that it's okay to follow him. I think that's a perfectly fine role for John if he takes it. If he does want to be that boisterous leader again, then, that's a good start. Is everything that he said in the media yesterday is certainly a good start to show the guys who have been here with him before, but also the new guys coming in who certainly heard all those comments know that he is bought into what's going on.
Now, I want to ask a question kind of like off field in your realm, just being a reporting on the team, asking questions to these coaches. Don't want you to disparage or talk bad or anybody in the previous, but with asking questions to Dan Quinn, Coach Dan Quinn, is it like a fresh breath of air and like how he answers questions? Is it much more open?
I think so. It's not so much as open as he is more how much you believe him. You know what I mean? And everybody knows actions speak louder than words, right? So in previous iterations of here, I've covered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so I've spoken to coaches there, and you hear the right words, and then you go to the practice field or you go to the games, and the action doesn't fit the language, right? And when that happens, there's a disconnect somewhere. And usually there's a disconnect between the person delivering the message to the press and then delivering the message to the locker room. And what you see now, I'm actually, that's my episode for Friday of Locked On Commanders. My second and third segments of my show is all about how this team is embracing the need for leadership and what actual leadership is. A lot of times we look at a head coach and say, well, he's a leader of the team. Well, that's not necessarily true. He's a head coach of the team, certainly is in the prime chair to be a leader of the team, but is he actually a leader? It's not necessarily true. Trust me, I met a lot of head coaches in this world that are not leaders. And same thing, just because you're wearing a captain's patch doesn't mean you're a leader. Are you an actual leader in the building? And I've had a lot of candid conversations over these last few years with members of the beat, with members of the organization sometimes, and I will tell them more than I ask for other people to give me their opinions about it. But to be quite honest with you, there's not a leaders that have been around this organization these last few years. And that is a major problem for why, and it's a major reason they've had some of the problems that they have. Now, what they're getting now, and again, you talk about guys like Bobby Wagner, and, I don't want to like redo my entire show myself here on your show, so I won't go too deep into it. But, the biggest pet peeve I have with leadership in this world, and it doesn't matter if it's football or anywhere else, is in the dictionary, it's a noun, and that's fine. But we look at it as just this inherent thing that you either are by title or you aren't because you're not that title. But I'll tell you right now, the newest employee at a gas station, the lowest ranking private in a formation, the rookie that just joined the football team can all be leaders if they are in the right place and if that ability is facilitated and supported. And that's what I see is happening here with this team is they're talking the talk. They're talking about putting people in the right position. They're talking about being leaders. They're talking about taking care of people. But now you're actually seeing them do it. And again, as much as I never want to see Emmanuel Forbes return a kickoff in practice or otherwise again, you absolutely love the fact that this coaching staff put him back there and said, let's see what it looks like. Again, they might see something different than I saw. What I saw tells me don't ever do that again. Do something else with him during kickoff drills. But if they see something different, by all means, they get paid to do that. But what you like is they're trying Emmanuel Forbes in different positions. They say, hey, you might have the skill set to do this. You might be able to be a punt return. Maybe you can do this over here. They're putting people in position to say, hey, what is it we're going to do? You look at Luke McCaffrey coming out of Rice. Every single draft expert would have told you he's a big slot. First practice on the field, what do you see him doing? Lining up outside. Not only is he lining up outside, but he's lining up outside, beating an outside corner, working his way up the field, making a diving catch in the end zone, lined up on the outside. This is a guy who's 3 practices in to having a coaching staff that says, hey, you might be able to work outside, not just in the slot. So that's exactly what you want to see from a coaching staff. And then some of the other things that I can't speak about publicly. So you're seeing the words match the action. And that is what gives, I think, most people on the beat so much confidence that what we're being told is what's actually coming and what's actually going to happen.
I got you. I know we're kind of running a little bit late here, but I only have a couple more questions for you. Speaking of leadership, Ken Norton, obviously his leadership is one of a unique kind. What have you seen from him as a coaching?
Everything you'd expect, you know what I mean? And I'm glad you brought him up because Bobby Wagner, again, you talk about leaders, and Bobby was asked about leadership. And it's funny to me because it kind of just folds right into everything I'm talking about, right? Because Bobby Wagner is a leader of action, right? He's the guy Dan Quinn said he's a guy who obviously is going to come and do his job, but he's also going to take you and say, hey, man, here's where you need to be. Hey, here's why this play went wrong. Here's how we need to fix it. And again, leadership is an action. You have to do something to be a leader. You have to do something to affect what's happening on the field or, whatever the product is in any walk of life. Ken Norton, going back to his playing days, like he's a grab you by the collar and slap you upside the helmet and tell you why you messed up or how he's going to help you get better the next time. He's that way as a coach. He instilled that in Bobby Wagner. Bobby talked about that, but Bobby also talked about leaning on guys like Mike Singletary, Ray Lewis. What do those guys all have in common? Richard Sherman. I mean, you see Richard Sherman as a broadcast analyst. He is not a dude who's going to sit back and just show up to work and say, I did my job. I lead you by doing my job well. You can watch me do my job and do your job just as well. No, that's not leadership. That's just doing your job. Richard Sherman is going to grab you by the microphone cable and say, hey, dude, that segment sucked. You need to get better at your analysis or else we're all going to get fired. That's what leadership looks like. So when you hear Bobby Wagner talk about, I learned from Ken Norton Jr., I learned from Ray Lewis, Mike Singletary, guys who are in your face, cuss you out, grab you by the collar, put you in the right place, leaders, that is the kind of leader this team has needed. That's the kind of leader Bobby Wagner is. And it's the difference between being a friend and being someone who cares about you, because a friend is going to let you come out there and underperform. He's going to let you come out there and I don't want to say what I was going to say, but a friend will just tell you you're good. It's everybody else's fault. A leader will be honest with you. Sometimes that sucks. Sometimes that hurts. But if you take that leadership, they're going to put you in a position to be better, and you're going to be better off for it.
Absolutely, and that's very relative to like my line of work. What I loved about what Bobby said is that his boys in the huddle making fun of his shirt being too tight and stuff, and he would fit in right in with us on the job site. Next question I have for you, I wanted to kind of talk about Bobby Wagner, obviously, but I think we already have talked about him at length at this point. But what is the biggest game that you're looking forward to in this upcoming season?
I gotta be selfish. It's week 1 in Tampa. So, when I started the sports thing, I started writing about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was, active duty in the Army still. I wasn't living in Florida. I never even set foot in the state of Florida. Dude. And they gave me access to their team like I never expected. And I appreciate you. You know what I mean? And that's something that's rare in the NFL. I mean, there are teams, we could talk about some teams and the access they do and don't allow. So for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to allow a guy who doesn't live in the state of Florida, who isn't local to the beat. And I mean, I'm telling you, man, like if I hit them up and said, hey, I'm available to come to this game on this day, they said, cool, here's your credential. If I said, hey, I can come down for 3 days of training camp, they said, cool, here's your credential. Like, they really helped me get experience in this field while I was still finishing my other career. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So not even as not as a fan, like, you know what I mean? I would just always have a love for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just as a people, and the people who help me do that in their staff that, you guys will never hear of. So, and then of course the first NFL game I covered as a member of the media was at Raymond James Stadium. It helps that it's a very beautiful stadium and all that stuff. The pirate ship is always cool, but so it's kind of I don't want to call it a full circle moment because I'm not like at the end of this trip or whatever, but like to now go there. I've actually already been texting and emailing some people I know in the Buccaneers organization, be like, hey, I'll see you in week 1, but I'll be on the other side of the press box. I'll come say hi, but I'll be on the other side. Like, it's just gonna be a really cool moment to kind of marry the beat that I'm on now with the organization that really kind of helped me get to where I am today. It's going to be really cool. So selfishly, that game Monday night in Cincinnati is going to be really cool It's going to be really awesome. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Jaden reacts to prime time for the first time in the NFL. Caleb versus Jaden is going to be cool because I'm one of the people who said that Jaden Daniels was the best quarterback in the draft. And if I was the Chicago Bears, I wouldn't be drafting Caleb. I'd be drafting Jaden. So I hope that he proves me right. But even if they lose, you know what I mean? Doesn't mean I'm wrong. So that's the beauty of media. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of games, but I think those ones, those stick out the most.
Well, I appreciate you for being honest about everything that's transpired with you and your occupation. It's good to hear about you and like kind of your background and everything. It makes a lot of sense of what I've seen and actually experienced with you this far. Being very detail oriented explains a lot.
Yeah.
Last question I do have for you. Got to talk about the big men. What have you seen out of Brandon Coleman, the left tackles, and Cornelius Lucas? Obviously, it's the 7-on-7s. There's not pads yet, but just the eye test. What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean they're just when they're blocking another offensive lineman who's holding a big red pad, right? So it's hard to get a whole lot, but they're working on a lot of combo blocks. And they're working on a lot of like you've got the interior linemen out there doing things together. You've got the tackles and the tight ends working together. So they're working on some things that do have some intricacy to them. They do have some design, and it's interesting. I was talking to an offensive line coach, not that long ago, and he really said like the offensive line really is a dance. Like it's like a dance troupe, right? Like you look at like NSYNC and like Backstreet Boys and all those guys, like the offensive line is not much different. Like, and if you really break it down in the nuance of it, like we talk about the individual guys and their foot placement, hand placement, and all this stuff. But what a lot of times we don't understand is like if the left guard steps, to the left too far, it throws everything off. Like it throws the entire 5-man group off. Like it's really kind of down to that type of minutia. And I think Brandon Coleman is really kind of taking to it really well. I was watching him do combo blocks with John Bates on Wednesday, and they looked really fluid. They looked really fast, and I think that's really kind of the most important part is they didn't have to slow it down. And then Cornelius Lucas gets out there; they look the same. Andrew Wiley and Zach Ertz are working together like they've been working together for years. So, again, and I think the credit needs to be given to this coaching staff as well. Like they're not. You hear the phrase "drinking from a fire hose" all the time, right? And in previous iterations of camps, and I've seen new coaching staffs come in. This isn't just a dig on Ron necessarily, but like they literally come through and they say, here's everything that we're going to do all season long. Learn it in this first OTA practice. What this coaching staff is doing, and Dan mentioned it just yesterday, Jayden Daniels hasn't even negotiated a pocket yet. Like Jayden Daniels is, 6-7 practices total in. I mean, we've only seen 3 of them, including rookie camp, but he hasn't even taken a snap, a drop back from a pocket yet because they're not there yet. They're again, they just want the left tackle to know how to be a left tackle, left guard know how to be a left guard, quarterback. Here's how you quarterback. Get everybody on board just their job, and then we'll show them how the entire company comes together and puts on this production, right? And I personally, I like that approach to it. Now we'll see how successful it is. That's obviously where the biggest proof is going to come. But seeing it done other ways where you got a rookie quarterback or a first-year starting quarterback who's negotiating a pocket with a play action look and a blitz coming from a secondary all at the same time, and it's like your third practice running the offense. Like that's a little bit crazy. And I get the thought process like, well, drink from a fire hose. How much can you retain? How much can you do? Da, da, da. Okay, I get it. But at the same time, even drinking from a fire hose, like you got to let them breathe. You got to let them come up for air sometimes, right? So I think that what this coaching staff is doing is they're saying, look, here's a very large bite. It's still a lot to consume. It's still a lot to take in, but you can handle it and you can chew it up. You can digest it. And then once we're all ready, we'll take the next step as well. And I think that method, it makes the most sense to me personally. Like it speaks to me better. So again, we'll see what the results are, especially in a couple of weeks when we see another OTA practice, and then the next week seeing the mandatory mini camp, and then really, where the rubber meets the road is how much do these guys retain coming back for training camp? How quickly can they get back up to that walk mode from crawl when they get back? Because that'll show you how effective this method is right now.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff, David, because especially when you talk about pools with the offensive line, talking about that dance, so to speak, having that pool, knowing exactly when to do it, you can trip guys up very, very easily. You all have to be in sync. And I watch a Sean Ryan podcast a lot and listening to like Delta Force operators and the elite of special forces, and they know that what they're going to be doing next, why they're doing it, and that's the sort of thing that you want to build here, to your point about John Bates and Coleman working really well together. David, I can't thank you enough for joining me today, giving me extra 10 minutes here that you weren't supposed to. I know you got something else to do. But before you get out of here, just like to plug your show and your social media handles, just in case anyone watching hasn't followed you yet, sir.
Yeah, sure thing. Locked On Commanders 5 days a week. That's my main gig, but also CommanderGameDay.com, part of Sports Illustrated's thing. We're we're not, despite some recent articles, Sports Illustrated is not dead. In fact, we've had a lot of exciting things coming on the horizon. So you can check that out as well. I'm on Twitter at dharrison82. I'll tell you, just like I tell everybody else, I don't really tweet that much. I'm actually more likely to retweet somebody else than I am to tweet my own stuff. I don't know. I just don't do it
It's
very
because you're a
well.
good
But
person
yeah,
and
all
normal.
those places I'm always down to talk about pretty much anything.
Hey, you'll need to put your own little get credit for it. You just like to promote whatever the heck is going on. Makes you normal, David. I can't thank you enough,
Yeah,
sir. Enjoy this Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for your service, sir, and being
yeah,
able to come on here and join us. Have a good weekend,
I
brother.
appreciate you. Yeah, you too.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with a man, Mr. David Harrison. That was fantastic. But speaking of this being a fantastic weekend and a long 3 day weekend for a lot of us, we thought we'd bring in our guy here, friend of the show, fantastic man himself, former Washington Redskin wide receiver, speedster, the deep threat, Mr. Anthony Armstrong. Anthony, how you doing, brother? Look at it.
I don't know. I felt like that was a hell of a wrestling promo intro right there, man. Ooh, look at the beard coming in. I see you.
Dude, the only reason I have the beard right now is because my trimmer died, and so
Oh,
yeah, so I can't. My mustache would look ridiculous if I have my normal bit, and you can't really see it, but like it looks like I'm not growing hair here, but there's hair here. I promise. The beard looks
oh
good. I
my
promise.
goodness.
My wife likes
Oh
it.
my goodness. Hey, that's all that matters, right? As long as your boot thing is on board. Shoot, man. Hey, he's like, hell, I got to live with her. Hell, she might as well like it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you should have heard her when I shaved my head, and I told her I was doing that from now on. She said, "Well, you better grow the beard then." So okay, I'll do that.
Wow. She likes your hair, man. That's good.
Anthony, my first question, we're gonna answer some fan questions as well, brother. Like you being a friend of this show,
I love those.
you've been doing the dance with us, but I want to get into some questions I personally have for you, brother, and I want to talk about Bobby Wagner and that
Ooh.
kind of influence, not only just on the veteran presence, but the fact of like who he is as a player as well. Was there a player like that you played with, and what the kind of influence that is on a young player?
Man, that is a hell of a question because I felt like that's been a missing piece for
Mm,
this team for a long time. And it's like you're like, oh, well, there are leaders on this team. I mean, you have, John
right.
Allen's and I think they are leaders they're because they are leaders, but it's kind of leaders by proxy, right? You kind of, Terry McLaurin made himself a leader and commanded it and he did it on the field. But there's a difference where, but when you see how there was the disrespect and people didn't necessarily respect the leadership that was over there, I've been saying you need somebody that's going to close the door after he's going to excuse the coaching staff from the meeting room, and then
Mm,
he's going to close the door and he's going to say we need to fix these things. That is that is what Bobby Wagner brings, right? He brings that level of leadership. And and it's not downplaying Duran and Jonathan Allen's leadership. I think, they're leaders because they're the best players at one of the best schools. But Nick Saban was the leader,
right.
right?
In terms of like,
Um,
you could almost say it like a parent, the difference between your parent scolding you for something and your older brother closing the door behind and saying, no, no, you don't do that sort of thing, to your point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that analogy. So, when you talk about a player like that, I think about the players I respected, London Fletcher. I know D Hall had done that a few times. I think like Lorenzo, just the ones that's
Mm,
like a total captain of that unit. Like if the kickoff team was not performing well, Zoe would be like, hey, hold on a second. Like this isn't it. Let's fix this. Like, see, let's talk this out. Let's get, we'd be on the same page. So that's what Bobby Wagner brings. I think it's an important missing piece, and now you have it, which can make it so dominating on the defense.
you're absolutely right. And you being a former wide receiver, I'm fascinated to know this answer from you. Like Jaden Daniels' running ability is obviously something that is dangerous for defenses, but obviously it's something that you want to have controlled chaos, right? With that sort of running. But that running ability, what does it do for you as a wide receiver?
Man, that there's a couple ways you can see a running quarterback. Now, I think one of them is running the run and running the throw.
Right.
I want to see how he handles that, right? How he navigates that. I think if you go and try to compare, you'll see a Patrick Mahomes kind of runs where he will distinctly run and take off, but a lot of times he's trying to extend enough so for somebody to get open so he can throw it. Is Jaden going to play more in that realm, or is he going to fall more in the line of, let's say, Lamar Jackson?
Right.
And where I feel like if Lamar starts to take off, he's like, I'm finna go ahead and run for 15, and then we'll get back and we'll be on first down and go from there. So if he leans more to the run to the pass, it lets me know that I'm always alive. It lets me know that I always have a chance to get the ball thrown to me. And hell, like I just have an opportunity to do something. Like it's not just like, oh well, he's gonna throw it away because that's the next read. It's like, all right, he's running back to me. Hey, scramble drill is now in full effect. Let me get back downhill and find be a open receiver for my guy. So yeah, it lets you know that there are big plays available, and he's ready to deliver those.
I want to ask you about Coach Dan Quinn, because obviously I'm not at that level, obviously, but like at the pro level, I think coaching is incredibly hard in the terms of the respect factor and getting guys to buy in and everything that you're doing. From the outside looking in, just seeing it, what have you seen in the difference with Dan Quinn?
It's just immediately you can tell in the language that's used, in the interviews, you can tell in everybody's on like beating it with the same drum, and it's just been the same thing, and it's all positive. Like it's all good vibes. I've said that there's this confidence that's brewing over there, but it's also a bit of humility, right?
Mm.
Like the pot is simmering and it's steaming, but it's got the lid on it, right? But a little while you popping popcorn, it's gonna expand and eventually it pops off. But right now, like everybody's like, man, like this is better than before. They feel rejuvenated. Um, it's something about that, and then him being able to get the best out of people. One thing I saw, uh, Kyle, and what's up, Mike?
What's up?
One thing that I saw, he said, and it stuck out to me. He says, "We're trying to learn the learners." He said that
Mm.
early on in one of his press conferences, and what that stands out to me is that he's like, "I'm trying to find out how does this person best interpret this information." Right? Not everybody is gonna be like, come sit in the office with me and let's watch film. He's like, Coach, I don't almost cuss. Coach, I don't watch I don't know the film. I already don't understand it. Just tell me who to cover and I got him. Some
Mm.
people are like that. Other guys, like, you have to physically put them on the field and give them more reps. And the more they do it, they start to understand. Some people are drawing, they write it down. Some people you just get to tell them and they're like, okay, got it. They're figuring that out. And I think that's what gets people to buy in more because they can see that he's taking that step to help, because it's like, hey, you telling me to run down, I'm a small guy. Hey, you run down there, hit the wedge, right? But if I'm not doing it that well and you come to my level to say, look, I understand, like you're hitting 600 pound of people, but let me help you out. Let's find a way to make this successful for you. So I think his ability to connect with players on the way that they learn is what separates him, and it's shown that everybody is kind of on the same page.
Yeah, and it's like that parent teacher, a teacher student kind of relationship in a way, and it's almost that one on one learning is, I guess, what Dan Quinn is saying, and essentially that just trying to learn how each student actually learns. Like I'm more hands on. I have to
Mhm.
be able to. Obviously, I could watch film, but I have to be able to do it to kind of really learn it and see it happen in front of me to be able to kind of get the concept of it. And I'm sure Hall is different than I am, right? And how do you get both guys to buy into what you're trying to sell, right? You have to be able to learn how they do that. Hall, thank you for joining us, dude. I know you're feeling a little bit under the weather, but do you have a question for Anthony before we answer fan questions?
Yeah. So obviously it's been a pretty good, I would say, really really good off season for the Commanders, going all the way back to hiring the GM Adam Peters and all the additions that Harris and his group are taking over with, as far as like the front office changes and all that. And they go ahead and draft Jayden Daniels, who a lot of the fan base is really hype about. What do you think has been their best addition this entire offseason?
Mm.
Ooh, wait. Yeah, man. See, the one thing I love about coming over here, y'all got some questions, man. Like y'all got some really well thought out, like need to be asked to some of these people in the building. And I'm kind of a softball. I'll give you a little softball. I ain't over here to cause no drama. But y'all asked a hell of a question. The best addition that they've made. It's honestly that is so difficult to grade because you can put everything in a different silo and you're like, is it on the field? You're
Right.
like, okay, that's obviously you say it's the quarterback right now. You're gonna put that on there, or is it a Bobby Wagner? You're gonna name a player. But I honestly feel like it's got to be Adam Peters. I think he's got to be the best because if he is the true architect of of what's going on right now, I mean, he said he ran the draft and everybody A plus. When's the last time you seen A plus in Washington on the draft?
Yeah,
I can't tell you when.
been a
Maybe
long time.
maybe in a mock draft. I do a mock
Right.
draft. You're like, if this happens, then we cool. But no, it's been a minute. And so for him to compile the coaching staff and then start building out this infrastructure of how the business runs, and like you can see he's like, hey, y'all football coaches, go do football. Right? They talk about,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go off on a tangent, but this is very similar to how they run Texas Tech now. Texas Tech is there is a recruiting staff, and then there's the football staff. Football coaches coach. They don't even know who they recruiting. They just show up with new ingredients. They're like, all right, cool, bet I can work with you. But the recruiting staff does all the recruiting side of things. So I feel like this is how it's going. Like let the brain trust, the personnel brain trust, get out there and do their thing. Let them navigate that. And then we gonna give y'all the best type of player. You tell me what you need, I'll go find the best one. Right. So that's what they're doing. And him putting this together right now, like it's masterful to watch. Like put some like classical music behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just be like, man, this is artwork going on right now.
You're absolutely right. That probably is the most important and best asset that they have acquired so far, just given the structure to your overall point of giving what the team truly needs, and obviously Adam hired Dan Quinn and company. But let's answer some fan questions, boys, to wrap up this episode. This one's from Deluxe in the Discord, Anthony. He says he keeps seeing comparisons to the Houston Texans of last year. I think there's too much focus on one player. Has any team ever turned over so much in one offseason? Ownership, GM, coaching, personnel department, support administration, roster, 6 top 100 draft picks, uncharted territory, and he loves every bit of it.
Man, this is the great reset. Like you hear
Mm,
that you see that getting thrown around. This is the great reset. Like you really saying like you never have you seen this situation work out this way where you have all this cap space. You have draft picks, draft assets, monetary assets, an ownership group that's ready to spend some assets. Um, and now you went from having no place to play football. We don't want you over here. No, we don't want your stadium. Now it's like,
right.
hey man, come on in. We'll build two stadiums if you want. You can play a home A and home B. Like everybody wants the Washington franchise in their municipality. They want them there. You're getting fans to get back involved. And I mean, you just kind of got to sit back and just sit back and enjoy it because this has never before seen, never before seen. Like this is some true life Madden stuff where you go in there and you start playing with the sliders. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is the best part of it, y'all, is you didn't hasn't there hasn't been a big splash player. He didn't go Brian Burns.
Right.
You know what I mean? He even and then even trading Montez Sweat,
Right.
like go way back there, you avoid the $100 million contract.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like that makes a lot of sense to me. All they gonna do is double team him. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
hell, let's see if we can get somebody to Dorrance Armstrong on the way up, having a good swing, has a hell of a last name. Like he's got a lot of good things going for him. So um that makes sense to me. I like how he's just navigating this thing. It's cool to watch.
It is cool to watch. And Deluxe, to your question, I think the comparisons to Houston is probably a simple aspect of way people are looking at it, and it's more so hopeful. And obviously, the Texans are built in a different aspect. Like I think they hired their general manager from New England like 3 or 4 years prior, so they had time
Yeah.
to build up for C.J. Stroud, so to speak. This coaching staff and this administration, they did not have that ability. But I will say this: I love the way that they have built a team. To Anthony's point, the island of misfit toys, bringing guys over like Jeremy Chin, Frankie Louvu, who almost feel like they have been left behind by the other coaching staff that was implemented into their team halfway into their career, right? And so a lot of these guys on this team right now aren't the big name guys, aren't the big money guys that have something to prove. And when you have a young team like this, that's the type of personality that you want for everyone to buy in, to say we have an opportunity here. We believe in you, and as a team, as a unit, we can do some incredible things now that we have the structure and administration organization behind us trying to get the most success possible. Hall, do you got anything to add?
Yeah, just overall to that Texans comparison, like I get it because, like you said, they already had the GM in place and they've been kind of building this like low key until up until now. But if you really look at like Nico Collins and Tank Dell was a rookie coming in, so you didn't really know what you're going to get from him.
That's my boy.
Like I think the comparison comes because I think people think that Jayden Daniels can kind of have that he can just come in and kind of elevate the play of everyone else around him. Like I said, because no one was talking about Nico Collins as a dominant number one wide receiver, and no one knew what they're going to get out of. Well, I know you did, but I'm saying most people, unless you're a Texans fan, you didn't
You
really
got to
know who
run
Nico
the
Collins
tape.
was.
You got to run the tape. You should run the tape. Like, hey, I called this, by the way, but
I did. I
So
was
I
on
just
here
think
talking
that,
about it in that pre-draft process. I really liked Nico Collins.
look,
He was a playmaker
he's a
at
Michigan guy. I knew who Nico Collins
Yeah,
was. I knew he
I
was a
know.
baller, but most people outside of the Texans fans were kind of like, who's this guy? He kind of just burst on the scene last
Right.
year. So I just think that I'm not going to say like they're not going to. I mean, anything's possible, but as far as like the comparison of like the Texans with the quick turnaround and making the playoffs, that's like the ceiling of what it could be. But I just think the floor of the comparison is Jaden Daniels seems like a guy that's going to come in and elevate the play of everyone around him and elevate the team to maybe 2-3 more wins, kind of like a CJ Stroud did last year.
yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, Houston was 10-7. They would have been third in the NFC East. I
Right.
mean, so shoot, I could see Washington at its best. I mean, and like you said, this division is always flip flopping.
Yep.
So I think the top is making it to the winning the division.
Yep, and you're absolutely right. In a division with the sweethearts of the NFL and the NFL media with Philly and New York and Dallas, it's awesome to have the mindset of the island of misfit toys in this aspect. I love what they are building here. Anthony, and the next question is from Aled, who's actually going to the Tampa Bay game this year and from the UK. Thank you, Aled. Oi! His question is, Anthony, with the current O-line personnel, can Jaden Daniels carry the team in that respect, or will we have to look at other options on hopefully to have a successful season? P.S. He says, I'm heading over to Tampa.
All right. So go back a little bit. What's the question? Repeat it again.
With the current O-line personnel, can Jaden Daniels carry the team in that respect, or do you think that we will have to look at other avenues, i.e. free agents, post-June 1st cuts?
I think that you definitely have to have your finger on the pulse of the tackle market. Brandon Coleman may be a gem, but when you look at the NFC East ends edges that are going to be out there getting busy, you probably want to make sure you have a couple, bits of options that you can put in there, right? Like it's not easy. So I think you got to have your finger on that pulse for sure. But you never know. You may get you may hit strike gold with Lucas and Coleman. Maybe they shuffle the deck and Coleman's inside, and I'm sure you'll see that look, Coleman inside and Lucas outside, and see how they work together. But you never know. So, but no, pay attention to it. Bakhtiari is out there, and who else is out there? Orlando Brown, is he out there too?
I think he's still with the Cincinnati Bengals, if I'm not mistaken. I think they signed him last season to a pretty big contract, if I'm not mistaken. But with the current O-line personnel, we just talked to David. We just talked to David Harrison before you, Anthony, and he talked about how he's seen John Bates working really well with Brandon Coleman, and that they worked well together fast. And
Yeah.
that's really refreshing to hear because John Bates is basically an offensive lineman as a blocker from the
Yeah.
tight end position. And so that's one way you could say you can kind of offset that issue that people kind of think there. But also the offensive game plan of Cliff Kingsbury of getting the ball out of Jayden Daniels' hands fast can kind of mitigate those risks as well. And also the run game with Brian Robinson, one of the best pass blocking backs probably in the NFL. I'm not going to be coy about it. The dude is a freaking tank back there. And so I think that with the personnel we do have, I don't think that we need to be panicking about it. Now, that being said, if something does happen in camp and maybe they do need to add somebody else, I would love to add a guy like David Bakhtiari or others here. But at the moment, it's not something that I feel is a need. And I truly do feel that Jaden Daniels is not going to be required to carry it. I think they're going to be able to facilitate whatever they need to in order to help Jaden Daniels be at his strength because it's a different coaching staff. And what everyone has said about Cliff Kingsbury and his quarterbacks is he gears everything to their strengths. And it's not more so putting everything on his shoulders. It's just doing what he does best. And let's allow that to happen. And so I don't think that they're going to restrain or constrict him at all with what they have in personnel. I think they're going to map it out for him. What about you, Hall?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Anthony on this. Like outside of the left tackle, I think the line is solid, like average to above average at best, depending on how they play and gel together. But I think that left tackle position is obviously right now a pretty big hole. And if you really look at the schedule and the teams that we face this year, the AFC North, the division teams, you got Brian Burns, Michael Parsons, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, the Ravens defense. So there's going to be some heavy hitter defensive ends that we're going to have to go up against this year. And you're going to need that blind side protected. So,
Touche, sir.
like you said, Bakhtiari's out there, but I know he's played like 3 games in the past like 2-3 years, which is like crazy. So, I mean, can you take a flyer on a guy like that? Who knows? But like you said, hopefully Coleman can develop and maybe become that guy down the road or maybe midseason. But yeah, as of right now, I think that Cliff's going to try to scheme around it, get the quick pass game going. Obviously, the run game's going to help. So I do think that they'll try to scheme around it, but I don't think they'll make Jaden kind of do it all by himself. I do think they're going to have to get the quick game going, the screen game, the running game going. So I think it'll be all that combined into one to help Jaden out.
I'll go a step further than that. I say you can if Bakhtiari ain't played but 3 games, hell, maybe those top 2 kids do develop pretty good, and they're good enough where you like I'd rather start them and let them get the reps to get better, knowing I have Bakhtiari to kind of hey man, it's getting ugly. Can you hold it down for like
Man, that's a good point.
put him in there in short order, and then they're like, who's gonna start next week? He's gonna say it's gonna be this other dude, right? Like we're not gonna wear him out. So I don't know that they may think that way. I don't know. That's just something that crossed my mind where you're like, I got the OG just in case. And then worst case, you just he's going to keep being healthier and more fresh the later you get in the season. Plus, week 14 bye
Yep.
again. So
Yep.
that's a long time to have before you have a break. Fortunately, they don't have to travel very far.
Yeah, and obviously the injury history is well cataloged with David Bakhtiari, but I do think he gets a bad rap. The original surgery he got on his knee was not properly repaired. And so he was draining historic amount of fluids out of his knee the past 2 seasons. And what they're reporting now, I think as of this week or last week, that they actually properly repaired it. And so now it's just seeing how he recovers from it. And obviously I would love to add him here, but it's like that's a guy who is a high caliber type of player at his peak, and obviously he could be at the bottom of it, of course, but just putting the caveat in there, he is kind of getting not a fair shake in the terms of how we're talking about him in the 3 games and stuff. He was dealing with a lot, obviously, and wasn't all his fault. Now, Anthony, next question from Deluxe. What are your thoughts on Forbes returning kicks? He personally thinks that some are reading too much into it.
Man, it's you put people out there that can make plays, right? The kid has 6 pick sixes, and in some regard, with the way the new kickoff rules are set up, with everybody being so close, and I've done this drills. It's essentially how you save people's legs in training camp. Instead of saying run 40 yards before you get into each other, line up 10 yards apart, or line up 5 yards, and they'll have the other side get a little bit of a head start. So that's the only difference that I'm interested to see, because they usually would give the return team a little bit of a head start, but that's neither here nor there. Forbes can, if he finds the right gap and it splits, like 88 out the gate. So why not give another playmaker a chance? Because I'm sure later on down the line, you're going to see, you know, Luke McCaffrey back there getting a couple shots to see what he looks like. So coaches got to start taking, getting ideas of where players are going to fit when they want to start to build what this roster is going to look like coming into training camp.
You're absolutely right, and I do agree with you, Deluxe, that people are trying to just find an issue with it in terms of trying to crap on the young man in Emmanuel Forbes. Look, it's not his fault that he was drafted where he was, but like we're moving, right? My family and I were moving in early June to Delaware. I'm starting at a new shop, a new warehouse. And my uncle keeps saying to me, "Well, what if they don't have enough work for you, whatever have you?" I told him, "Look, I don't care. I'll scrub toilets. I'll work in the warehouse. I'll install. I'll do whatever I need to. Just find me some work and I'll get it done for you." And I just hope that Emmanuel Forbes has that same similar mindset. And at this point, that's what he's doing. They're asking him, "Do you want to return kicks?" Hell yeah, let's do it. Do you want to be on kickoff team? Hell yeah, let's do it. And so I like that aspect with Forbes. And it's not only just Forbes. Brian Robinson is returning kicks and others. And they're just trying to see with everyone out where can you help us? And this is the best case scenario right now because you're in OTAs. You don't have pads on. This is the best time to be able to see what can you do, what can you offer. And there's experimental phase, so to speak, while you implement new installs and stuff and play. So I think it's a great idea. I think people are reading too much into it, and they like the misery of others in some way, and I don't like the look of that. But with Emmanuel Forbes, I think that he's doing the right thing. And the one thing that pissed me off most with Emmanuel Forbes is that he didn't stand up for us enough when what's his face Joey Porter Jr. was talking crap about us to him on that stupid Instagram live. Like, stop going live with that child, man. What about you, Hall?
Yeah, no, I'm not making a big deal out of it. Like you said, Brian Robinson was back there as well, receiving kicks and whatnot, and like how the new kind of XFL style kick is set up. A lot of people are saying it's almost like a blocking, like running play type thing. So it would kind of make sense that a running back like Brian Robinson would be back there because he can see in front of him, know how to set up his blocks, hit the hole. And a guy like Emmanuel Forbes, who obviously, like Anthony said, had six pick sixes in college. I'm sure he's caught an interception down the field, had to return it to the end zone, had to set up his blocks a little bit, go around, like, make a couple moves. So, like you said, it's just one of those things where it's only May. Like, they're just trying to figure out what guys can do. And like Dan Quinn, they're trying to find people's hidden talents or special powers and kind of expand on those. So maybe he ends up being a guy that can return kicks for us and give us good yardage on field position for the Jayden Daniels in offense.
Yeah, no, if you've watched this show, you know what I've said about Brian Robinson running full speed downfield. That is a train and brings back to Waterboy with a meanie running up a running back to woo, and Waterboy going to say, "You sound like a big choo-choo train." Well, that's Brian Robinson coming downfield at you, man. Last question, Anthony, that we have of the night. This from Yam Sensei, our boy. God bless you, Yam. He says, "What do you consider to be a failure for this upcoming season? What do you consider a success? Take potential injuries or anything else like that out of the equation."
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that last caveat because I was like, I don't want to even, put that in my head. But um, I mean, the biggest failure would be laying just laying an egg out the gate. And
Okay.
because you're gonna hear, oh, it's the same old da da da. And that's saying that, and that people gonna be so ready to play that record, they gonna have the needle just ready right there.
Mhm.
First negative play. That's
See,
gonna
I
be
knew we should
big.
have drafted Drake May.
Exactly, right? Drake May highlight come up. Look at Drake May through this pass.
Oh, Sam
And
Howell just threw 2 touchdowns. See?
yes, that stuff's gonna happen. So I'd be interested to see, hey, what's the first bit of adversity you have in that first game, and do you bounce back from it? How do you respond? Right? Do you come back from being 10 down? Do we've because hell, 2-0 is a scary number, and the way the schedule is set up, 2-0 is very plausible. And I know it's May, but if you go, well, what these other teams were, and you kind of think, well, what we could be, they could find a way to win 2 games.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So like 2-0 may be kind of scary, but I just want to see how do they bounce back. Like I'm not necessarily looking for them to come out full steam ahead like 50 points on Tampa Bay. But like, is it gonna come down to the last, 2 minutes, 17 seconds? Jaden Daniels gets the ball on the 19 yard or 35, whatever yard line they give it to you on. And like, does he go down the field slowly, methodically, and put the ball in the end zone, throwing it to, Ben Sinnott or something like that, Terry McLaurin? Like, is it gonna be one of those chilling moments that give you chills? Like, oh, this is gonna be special. That's what I'm looking for. So don't lay an egg. That's a failure. The biggest success, the biggest success is for I'd be looking for like growth. How do they respond? How do they look week in and week out? We've seen before with
Okay.
teams where you've seen it before with some of the teams where like it looks like did they quit? Like they look defeated. They don't look as even though you look like I understand you lose, but like there's one way you just lose and you like still kind of fight, or you lose and you just let them run you over. Don't do that latter. Don't just sit there and get beat up, right?
Mhm.
At least fight for yourself. It was like the Monday Night Massacre. Like we was down by a whole lot of points, but it was like, man, if we
I was
score
there.
every single time, it's like if we score every single time we touch the ball, we could win, right? Like let's try to do something. Don't just lay there. Like fight back, right? So I'm looking to see growth. Obviously, I said that winning the division would got to be what your main goal is because it's very plausible in this division. So you know, let's say making the playoffs would be a
Funny.
success.
For
Making the
me,
playoffs.
this is a great question, Yam. For me, a failure of this season would be if we see what we saw early of last season. Guys complaining about the practice sessions, guys complaining about the situation, not playing as one, right? That's a failure in my eyes because what you want to see out of these great organizations is everyone is on the train. Everyone believes in what they're being taught. Everyone believes in their teammates. They have confidence in their teammates for them to do their jobs, and that they're all going to do what they need to do in order to win. Too many times we've seen that individual mindset, the leaks, the kind of backstabbing aspect. That would be a failure in my eyes if guys are fighting on the sidelines at each other, getting in verbal arguments one on one. But then a success, in my opinion, is seeing the players take control of things, like you said, Anthony, before, those closed door meetings, kind of having that camaraderie, but also having fun and whooping ass while doing it. That's when you truly see as a team. Too many times you see a guy make a play and he's by himself doing the little, like, I don't want to see that anymore. I want to see the group
That
celebration.
was a real specific
I
celebration you did
cannot
there.
stand it. I cannot stand it. And Josh Norman did the same thing. But I want to see the group kind of celebration. I want to see the understanding that we as a unit made this play happen. Obviously, you have individual plays all the time, but overall, it's betterment. It's for the best of the team. And that's the success, in my opinion, is that all the guys are on board. They believe in what they're being taught, and they believe in each other and what's going on. And when you have that, good things happen. What about you, Hall?
Yeah, I think a failure would be if you come out and you see that there's no real plan on how to develop Jayden Daniels and
Mm.
how they're going to develop the team also. And you see like a almost like a Sam Howell-esque type of thing where they just dropping him back 30, 40 times a game and just pretty much throwing him to the wolves, or I guess you could say throwing him in the deep end and say, hey, go ahead and swim type thing. So I think a failure would be if they just say, go out there and we're going to make you, I don't know, like I said, kind of Sam Howell-esque, where it's just like go into the deep end, we'll see if you can swim or not, where there's no real plan of like, hey, how are we going to develop him, attack this on defense, do this, do that, and do that. And
Too
I
much
think
drawing in the dirt.
yeah, exactly. And I think a success would be kind of like you said, Kyle, where everyone buys in, everyone sees like, okay, we're all moving in one direction. There's no infighting, there's no leaks, there's no rumors, there's no this, there's no that, there's no factions of I wanted Jaden Daniels as my quarterback, like da. There's no
Right.
other guys like, oh, I wish Sam was still here, or I wish X quarterback was like our quarterback, or Drake May, or whoever it might be, Jacoby Brissett. So I just think that if everyone buys into Dan Quinn and the coaching staff, everyone pulls the rope in all one direction, and you see the development and the growth from week to week. Like you said, I don't want to see a team start fast and then they kind of fall off towards the end of the season, kind of like Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona, where they start fast and then as the season goes on, the second half of the season, you fall off. I want to see that consistent growth and week to week. Like obviously, there's going to be ups and downs. He's a rookie, but I want to see how you start the season. I want to see how you finish the season better than you started. I should say that would be a success to me.
That wasn't
Mm.
Cliff's fault. The new Call of Duty had just come out midway through the season, bro.
Man, you over there preaching, man.
I
Hey,
mean,
man.
Y'all better get the plate around the side over there, man. You were preaching. No, for real. But
I'm
no,
trying.
have y'all? Let me ask y'all this. Have you ever considered like how much head coaching experience is on this staff?
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I don't know how many years, but it's a lot,
Yeah,
it's an
you got
right?
incredible
Anthony
amount. Anthony
Lynn,
Lynn, right?
Kingsbury, obviously Dan
And
Quinn.
Joe
and
Witt hasn't gotten his opportunity yet, but
but
that's
he
coming.
about to. He's
Yep.
soon. He's next. One of the next ones. But you look at a lot. I mean, a lot of them they've been at the top, and now they're going back to positions that they kind of operate best in.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Dan Quinn doesn't have to hold a lot of hands.
Like
Yeah.
Jim Tomsula, because obviously he was subpar as a head coach in San Francisco, but John Allen, Deron Payne, they talk about how great of a defensive line coach he was, like same
That's what I'm
sort of breath,
saying.
right?
Yeah, like there are people where you're like, this guy deserves to be a head coach because he's tenured, and I mean, we can go down the list of people who we felt that, and then, but either way, like sometimes you get there, like, hey, it didn't work at being a head coach. Like head coaches have a lot more duties than a position coach, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're a damn good, passionate linebacker coach or a receiver coach, and then as you go up the ladder, you get further away from that specific spot, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's why they try to hop around and be in different. But like Dan Quinn has been known to be a leader of men. He gets people to play for him. He's in that position to do that. I mean, Ken Norton, Larry
Yeah.
Izzo has like uh, the Joe Witt. You said him, Kingsbury, uh, John Brian Johnson. I mean, the names of people who are going. They're not going to be there long.
Yeah.
It'll be like that 2011 to 2013 looking. They'll have to rerun that, but some of those people are going to end up staying in the building, right? You're gonna get more. I feel like you have a chance to get more success because they're in positions that they get to do what they do best. And then whenever it's like, hey, there's a tough decision, we got like 7 former head coaches. Like all of them have learned. I would like to think Dan Quinn has learned from 28-3,
Yeah.
Oh,
right?
100%. Like he counted the days since he had been fired as a head coach in
Yeah,
Atlanta,
you
right?
know what I'm saying? Like you have to think that, he seems like the type of guy that learns from mistakes, right? So he's learned from that, and now he's gonna apply that, right? Cliff
Mm-hmm.
Kingsbury has learned. He's an offensive person. Maybe he didn't need to be a head coach. Like you get to focus on offense, and you got a young quarterback that you know a lot about. Like you should be successful. So it all aligns to me. That makes a lot of sense, and
So
it's
excited, dude.
interesting. Yeah, it's just, but it's like a calm. It's like you're sitting back, like I know something that you don't know, right? Everybody else around there, like, yeah, whatever. It's the same in Washington,
Yeah, same with
right?
Yeah.
Washington. Like, okay, sure, bud.
And
That's
you
so
don't.
true, though. That's so true.
But in past years, people be on there loud as all get out. Oh man, forget this. This person is gonna do this. Now everybody's just like, you'll
Hmm.
see,
Yep.
you'll
Just wait
see.
and see. Just wait and see.
Yeah.
You're
So
absolutely right. Boys, I can't thank you enough for joining us for this episode. If you've made it this far, you're a frickin' champion. If you've heard a bunch of jumping going on, that is my son above my head upstairs, jumping up and down, doing everything he can, just having fun, being a normal, typical 3-year-old. Anthony, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hall, I know
man,
you being under the weather. Finding out you're going to be having a baby girl here very, very soon, sir. Congratulations from us. We can actually publicly say it now.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations, man.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Watch you grow throughout all these
congratulations.
years. It's been amazing, dude. And to see the man you are, it's awesome to be here in front of you and be here with you. Anthony, I can't thank you
Thank you,
enough for
thank you.
taking some time out, going, almost 40 minutes now with us, dude. It's
Yeah.
always a fun time, man.
Whatever happened to Reed? Where's Reed at?
He got caught in traffic and he said, "I'm sorry, I failed you again." But I told you guys. I told you guys last week when we did the send off. I said, "Hopefully we'll see Reed next week. Might not. We might. We don't know.
Oh my
It's
goodness, you
almost like a
called
gift
it.
box, you know. We just don't
You
know what's in it."
called it. You called it. That's hilarious.
Anthony, before we get out of here, would you like to plug your show and your social media handle just in case anyone watching hasn't followed you yet, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. At Rated Armstrong. That's where you can find me. Believe Commanders show. Believe in Commanders. Check me out. I've been doing some cool little like things where I get some other clips and like react to them. So I'll be watching YouTube channels. So I'm over here trying to do it myself. I'm gonna do it with this one, matter of fact. So it's gonna be Inception. You're gonna see my head down here in the bottom left corner. I'm gonna react to what I said. So but no, y'all got bomb ass questions. I always appreciate kicking it with y'all and your fan questions because Lord knows I don't got time to go and try to get fan questions. So I appreciate y'all. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
We appreciate
and
you.
Anthony, I always appreciate you taking time out of your day. And I know it's hectic where in your house just like it is mine. I know it's hard to get time nowadays. And so you being able to come out with us and talk a little bit, it's always a pleasure, sir. Watching you on Sundays, catching those footballs. And it's honestly, it's really, truly a miracle. Or it's amazing to be able to sit here and talk to you, pick your brain a little bit about football. But we don't need to get too sentimental. We already did that a little bit. All right, boys. We'll see you again next Thursday. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall. Don't zoom in on this video because I'm sweating like it's 2 days over here.
Don't bring me back to those, man. That's how you know you could separate the football players from the basketball players was 2-a-days. All right,
yeah.
everybody.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see you next week on Thursday. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to everyone who has served and all those and obviously everyone who has passed in service. We can't thank you guys enough. Make sure you read the book, We Were Soldiers Once and Young. I just finished it. It's absolutely incredible. If you really want to know about truly sacrifice of what guys did for one another, that's a great book for you to read, especially on Memorial Day weekend. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.